Hi everyone, my name is Mrs. Zawadzki, but you can call me Mrs. Z. I used to be a teacher in the Syracuse City School District, and then I was a principal in the Liverpool area. I'm here to talk a little bit about the land that you're actually sitting on right now. You see this land, Syracuse, Tully, where I live, Tully Lake, Lafayette, Fayetteville, Cortland, all these places used to be land that was taken care of and loved by the Onondaga Nation in what is now New York State. As a matter of fact, they had about 2.5 million acres. That's a lot of land. That's about 4,000 square miles of land. When the white people came here to settle, unfortunately, they were forced to leave their homes, and they moved to an area near Nedrow that is now the Onondaga Reservation. That's only about 7,300 acres. That's a very big difference. The Onondaga Nation is part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which was made up of 6 nations, 6 tribes. The Seneca, the Cayuga, the Onondaga, the Oneida, the Mohawk, and then the Tuscarora that came up from the south. These nations were part of the wonderful democracy that was part of the oldest democracy in the world. Onondaga means people of the hills. In that culture, women held amazing power. They were leaders. They had a lot to do with the government. This was called a matriarchal society. They had extreme value and importance to natural resources and the environment. Their beautiful lake, the Onondaga Lake, and the creek and rivers that ran into it, unfortunately became damaged and polluted by the settlers and businesses that moved into the area. One of these businesses was in Solvay called Honeywell. Honeywell was a company that found that you could get salt from underneath Tully in these large caverns underground by pumping in water and then taking that salt through pipes to the shores of Onondaga Lake. At that point, they would boil the water in these large vats, taking the salt away from it, and then they would lay it out on these enormous drying areas. This salt industry was very important to Syracuse, and one of the byproducts of that was soda ash. Soda ash was used for lots of things like pharmaceuticals and other manufacturing compounds, but it also led to the pollution of the lake around them. Onondaga Lake became one of the most polluted lakes in the world. But here's good news. Honeywell recently gave back 1,023 acres of precious Onondaga Nation land. They can now use it to teach their young about Mother Earth. They can use it to plant medicinal herbs. They can use it for fishing and hunting and giving back to the bountiful mother. Today you're going to learn about the indigenous people that lived here. They struggled even when raising their children. Beginning in the late 1800s and right up until 1990, very often their children were taken away from them when they were little bitty kids and put in these amazingly difficult schools called residential schools. When they got there, their hair was cut, their clothing was taken away, they were forced not to use their native language, and they were forced to try to act like they were white children, not native indigenous children. Unfortunately, many of them died of disease and abuse and starvation. Some of them never made it home. When you think about it, this is a really important time for the nation to honor their children with this land give back. The Onondaga Nation are a peaceful people. They create a culture where they respect their elders, each other, their neighbors, and their children. You probably know that the Haudenosaunee culture created the game of lacrosse, which was a way back in the old days in ancient times for warriors to learn their skills of being competitive. Women were important because they were planters and they were gatherers. They planted 3 sisters, corn, bean, and squash, which were very important food staples to supplement the things that the men and boys hunted and fished in the land around us. They often lived in longhouses where multiple families resided, and men would make birch bark canoes out of birch trees by hollowing them out and then using fire to clear those areas. And then those birch bark canoes actually used to be on our lakes like Tully Lake. So this little introduction to the Onondaga is just something to get you thinking about on whose land you now sit and whose land we now reside. I know that each of you will be absolutely respectful as you learn a great deal from the movies which you are about to watch. If you have any questions at all, please let your teachers know, and my friends and I can get lesson plan materials for them. We would love to do that. Once again, I would like to thank you for being a very respectful and wonderful audience. Enjoy these films.